Hello and welcome to the two-man power trip of wrestling. I'm your host, JP John Paz. With me today, very special guest. He's basically the wrestling card king. He is, of course, a great follow on Twitter as well. He's Mr. David Peck. David, welcome to the two-man power trip. How you doing?
Hey, thanks for having me on. Pleasure to be here, and I love seeing the content, and just happy to be a part of it.
Awesome to get you on, and obviously wrestling card king for sure. I'm just like, just even before getting into anything, I'm just curious, like, how did that happen? When did that start? Like, how'd you get into the wrestling card game? Because I mean, I've seen some of your posts and some of your card stuff. Like, man, it's amazing.
It's a weird story because I grew up collecting baseball cards and a little bit of basketball, and um, Brock Lesnar is my favorite athlete. And when he went into the UFC, it was, UFC was on fire. Everybody would go to parties, and it'd be all based around UFC. And um, UFC 100 was coming around, and I Tops had put out like these sort of thick Brock Lesnar, and I think there was a George St. Pierre and Chuck Liddell. And so I went online, I bought those off eBay, and I said, I think Brock had some football cards. He had tried out for football, and so I looked for those, and bought a few Brock cards. And I'm 44, and so in 1985 tops, baseball was really sort of, where it was at for somebody like me. And I said, I think Hulk Hogan, I remember he had a tops card. Let me see how much that goes for. And I found the 1982 Wrestling All Stars, a set was listed, and there was a picture of Hulk Hogan and Jerry the King Lawler. And then the second series had Tito Santana, Sergeant Slaughter, and Iron Sheik listed. And so I ended up winning the sets. I got them in the mail, and was just dumbfounded because I couldn't believe Ric Flair had a card, Andre the Giant had a card, Kerry Von Erich had a card, and as soon as I saw those in August of 2009, I just said, man, there's something here, and I just started buying lots of the wrestling cards.
That set is awesome. How many of the 82 Hogans do you have? It looked like you had a bunch.
I've got 30.
Wow. All different grades too? Like how do they look?
Yeah, so I've got some signed. I have some still in the sealed packs. I've got graded copies, and I have an uncut sheet. The thing with those particular cards is condition is very, very tough. You see a lot of them right out of the pack that are just terribly off centered or have print defects. The colored borders show lots of wear. So, the Hogan, it's kind of interesting because he's card number two, but he's card number 19 in the pack. So, you don't have as much risk to the Hogan as you do like a card to the front, but those yellow cards from both sets have a tendency to be cut where they just don't have very good centering. And also, the Hulk Hogan card has a lot of print defects. A lot of them you'll see have like this sort of like blotch next to his head and stuff. So, but I early on, I just thought the Hulk Hogan card was going to be like the Mickey Mantle of wrestling cards, and so I just kept buying a bunch of them.
How much is it worth?
Well, the price range is huge. The highest a PSA 9 has ever sold for is 44,000. Um,
Oh, damn.
Yeah, when you get into like a five, it might only be 1,500 at this point. There's a huge escalation in trading cards. When you get to the top grades where the supply is very limited, the price escalation can be huge.
Man, it just seems like looking at some of those cards, like, holy crap, I can't believe it's worth so much. And isn't Flair in that same set worth, just about the same or not, if not more than the Hulk?
No, so the Ric Flair card is a lot less condition sensitive. So there's a lot of eights. There's like, just to give you an example, There's 48 nines so far that have graded by PSA of the Ric Flair.
Oh,
The Hogan, there's 16 that have graded a 9. There's no 10s. So the Hulk card is a lot more condition sensitive. I think the spread in price is more predicated on just the condition. I mean, Hogan stuff sells for more than Flair's, but in this particular case, some of the divergence is just the condition sensitivity in reality.
how many Flayers do you have?
I think 24. Yeah, I've got a bunch of those. I've got two of the 510s. I've got 6 9s. I've got, I don't know, 8 or 9 8s. I mean, I got a bunch of them that are nice. And, what I did is I basically just loaded up on the stars and a lot of the cards. But, I've got an identical twin. And early on, so I collect for the PSA set registry where you try to, build the nicest set. And what ended up happening is that, some of the cards that are really, really hard in a 10, Hogan, there's not a 10, Andre, there's not a 10, but like guys that were not really anybody special, but there's only like 110 can go for, big money, right? And so years ago, my twin was like, Dave, he's like, listen, you know, spend that money on the stars. And so I just kind of I backed off some of buying the lower what we call population tens and bought a lot more of the stars. And they really, basically it was when COVID hit, the card market changed. We've seen a lot of the market soften, but it's there's still some pretty good value on some of this stuff.
I'm an identical twin as well. Are you older or younger? You obviously minutes wise.
Yeah, so Bill is 4 minutes older, and I tell you, it's fun because if you look at pictures of us up until about 6 to 7 years old, the only way we can tell is Billy Blue Shoes, David Red Shoes.
Wow.
As an adult, it's very clear, who's who.
I'm a minute older. That's it. Just 1 minute. We were hard to tell apart, but I did have a scar on my head from getting hit with a door. So that was the only difference. Everyone would look for the scar.
Do you guys still look identical?
No, not anymore. I mean, obviously you could tell brothers, but I don't think identical. I think people could tell the difference.
It's kind of weird because you'll see some of the twins out there, like where it's kind of funny. Bill and I did a Nickelodeon. We were on this game show called Get the Picture, and
Oh yeah, I know that. Yeah.
yeah, it's a fun story, but nevertheless, you could tell us apart. You could tell we were similar. The two girls we were going up against, I mean, they were literally like still identical at 13, which is, I think, I mean, rare and not rare. You know what I'm saying? Like, I
Yep.
think lifestyle choices sometimes change people, but if you stay doing the exact same thing, you probably stay looking the exact same way.
Right. Yep. Actually, my wife too is an identical twin, and when they were younger, I can't like when they look at pictures and stuff. I was like, I can't tell them apart. But obviously now, they look different to me. But people will always get them confused when they're out together.
To this day.
Yeah. Yep.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. I mean, so the thing with Bill and I is he is really in, what you call a guitar virtuoso. I mean, like a incredibly talented guitar player. I mean, like a Steve Vai, Eddie Van Halen type, guitar player. And so what had happened in basically middle school is, I was into sports still, and he got into, that was, we're, as I said, 44. So that was when grunge music was popular in the
Yep.
90s. And so Bill started, getting into guitar and stuff like that. So, I was working out and, he was playing guitar. And so, we just kind of, lifestyle basically went in a little bit different directions. And we're both now, it's kind of interesting. We're both in financial services. So it sort of came full circle.
Nice. And it's funny. I'm going to be 41, obsessed with Hogan. Even when I was younger, I was literally just talking to my mom. She's like 84, 85 is probably when you started watching. I was like, oh my god, it's basically 2, 3 years old. And she's like, yeah, you're obsessed. You thought he was like a god or a superhero. My brother liked wrestling, was kind of casual, but more of like a Michael Jordan. Cowboys in football, like he more of a. I mean, I love sports too. I love football and baseball, but he gravitated more towards sports, and I was like obsessed with wrestling, like absolutely obsessed.
Yeah, I kind of follow what you're talking about. I mean, in terms of, we didn't grow up with cable, and so I had a neighbor down the street that had cable, and I mean, I literally would beg that guy in 1986 and 87 to watch ESPN, to watch World Class Championship Wrestling, and or hold on, uh, WCCW, sorry,
Yeah.
from Texas or whatever. And so the nevertheless, I mean, Bill was, to this day, I mean, he'll watch wrestling, but I'm a long term fan.
Oh yeah, yeah, me too. Are you a big Hulk guy? I was just at Hulk's Beak Shop last Friday. You a big Hulk
Uh,
Hogan fan?
Yeah, I love Hulk Hogan. I mean, I think Hulk is the most underrated wrestler of all time. I think it's become sort of popular not to like him
Yeah.
in some ways and sort of diminish what he's done. I don't personally think we'd be even talking today if it wasn't for Hulk Hogan.
I totally agree. I'm working on another project. Can't really talk much about it, but I'm working on it as far as Hogan and the whole narrative of it. And in my head is, man, why the hell is he so underrated? Which is insane because literally the people today, like you said, I don't think would be watching wrestling whether they want to admit it or not if Hogan didn't exist. I mean, I probably wouldn't, or maybe wouldn't even be aware of it if Hogan didn't exist.
Well, so I'll give you an interesting story. My wife and I have been together 21 years, right? And we dated and been married, 14, almost 15. So when I first met her, she was shocked. She's like, "You like wrestling?" Because I didn't look like the prototypical guy back then that was a wrestling guy.
Yeah.
And so my parents got me when the Ric Flair DVD came out. I got that, and I had a big screen TV, and one of those huge ones you had to wheel around. And I mean, I love that DVD. I watched it, so many times I can't tell you. But she was like, "Who's this guy?" But she knew growing up in New York, and then moving to Florida when she was 10. She knew Hulk Hogan. She knew Junkyard Dog. So I think one of the issues that a lot of people forget is sort of casual fans knew who the WWF stars were. They were less aware of who the NWA or World Championship Wrestling stars were. So Ric Flair, I personally believe, has become more popular as we become adults,
Yeah.
and we can sort of appreciate that this guy was living this wild lifestyle and cutting these promos and sort of living the life, right? But
Yep.
Hulk Hogan, he transcended pop culture. I mean, he literally was as big in 1985 as Michael Jordan. So I think that when I it's fun when I first got into the wrestling cards. I started commenting on sports card message boards and telling people about these cards, and they had nothing positive to say about it. But what I said to them was this: I said, take a guy like Mike Schmidt, that was a Hall of Fame baseball player. He can walk through the Orlando airport and maybe a few people recognize him. Most people will not. Hulk
Yep.
Hogan cannot go anywhere without somebody knowing who he is. He is
Yes.
easily, I mean, I think to this day, top 25, if not lower, most recognizable human beings in the world. And, so that's worth a lot in my opinion.
I love doing that test to people that aren't fans. Like my father-in-law, for instance, never watched, not a fan, not into sports, not into wrestling at all. I go, "Do you know who Hulk Hogan is?" And he goes, "Come on, are you serious?" He goes, "Everybody knows who Hulk Hogan is." So I was joking around with my niece, who's only, I think she's 4, And I mentioned something, and she was looking at one of my Hogans. Like, you don't know who that is. She goes, it's Hulk Hogan. Of course I know who that is. I was like, oh my God. So the age range, like 70 and 4, like everyone knows who Hulk Hogan is. I love doing that test to people. Like, do you know who this is? Do you know who this is? Like Steve Austin, probably, there's a maybe there. Flair, probably, but maybe not Hogan. It's like 100% yes. I mean, everybody knows Hogan.
Well, I think, so I was fortunate enough to do a private signing with Ric Flair 6 or 7 years ago, right? And I had to pay for it, obviously.
Yeah.
And it was a happy hour, and it lasted 2 hours and 23 minutes. I sort of just remember it because basically what happened is Charlotte, or Ashley is what he called her. It was right before she was getting called up to WWE, and she got in a car accident. So my happy hour was supposed to be an hour, and it went longer because she got in a car wreck. And the reality of it is that people recognize Ric Flair now, okay, but it wasn't like Hogan. We were in the lobby of a hotel in Buena, close to Disney,
Yep.
and you had some woos and stuff like that. But I mean, if it had been Hulk Hogan, I don't really think we could have actually pulled that off.
No.
And in the bigger picture, as much as I love Ric Flair, I just think that Hulk Hogan is in a different league. And so, but where I was going with this is, as we were talking, you know, Ric Flair thinks Steve Austin's, the number one guy, and maybe he's right, but I just personally think that Hogan had a bigger impact than Steve Austin. Now, I had a lot of fun watching Stone Cold. Right when I turned 21, it's so much fun going to the Orlando Arena, and first time I could drink beer and watch a wrestling show. And when his music hit, it was awesome. But Hogan's different. I just think he's on a different level than all of them.
I totally agree. And I always get an argument with my buddy who's a huge Austin guy. And I mean, and still am really a big Austin guy, but Hulk, the longevity of it, the fact that he basically created WrestleMania, you know what I mean? He basically was the main event for 9 years in a row, if you think about it, or part of the main event for 9 years in a row. WrestleMania doesn't kind of happen without Hulk. All the other pay per views don't happen without Hulk. 33 million people watching the main event on NBC doesn't happen without Hulk. I mean, all these things, you think about Hulk, and he kind of paved the way for Austin. And if you look at it, when WCW was kicking ass, it was because of Hulk Hogan and the NWO. That brought all the wrestling fans back that had left. And then Austin kind of piggybacked off Hogan again. So I don't know. To me, you can't put Austin over Hogan just because the longevity and the fact that he kind of was piggybacking off of Hulk a little bit.
Well, I mean, Hogan's run is just untouchable.
Yeah, I agree.
And
Yep.
when you think about, I still keep up with wrestling, but I don't have all the time in the world. I'm in finance, and I've got a real life and so forth. And so I don't have all the time in the world to watch wrestling. And I would so much rather put on older wrestling. And if you watch Hogan's entrance at WrestleMania, if you watch WrestleMania 3, it'll give you goosebumps. I mean, when you see him get Andre in the slam, and the crowd, just goes bananas. I'm sorry. As much as Austin was cool, and this is no disrespect to him. I mean, he was great, but I just think that wrestling is a show. And so, when you see today, they focus on 5-star matches and so on. I'd rather see a 1-star match that has meaning and crowd involvement and feel versus some acrobatic, 16 false finishes and so on. I don't need that. WrestleMania 3, Hogan versus Andre. I mean, when you see that match, if you don't like it, then you don't like wrestling.
I know. I always say I love that match, and it's great. And then you look like the star system. Oh, it got whatever stars. Actually, he edited it. I believe it was negative something, and he edited it to 1 star, which is
Oh,
weird. You can't go back and edit stuff, but I remember he did go back and edit it. But I was like, man, that's just crazy. It's literally the slam of that match is the start of every WWE show ever. Like that's they do the slam, do the intro video. Like the slam is the first thing you see, and when you watch it WWE, so it's like, yeah, that match had significance. It was really important. It literally, was a huge boom period. It made them so much money. But the match is awesome. The crowd reaction's awesome, and it's a simple match with an injured Andre who's really, really kind of debilitated. But it's just awesome, I think.
Well, I mean, here's the thing. I mean, wrestling is an art form, and it's a show. So my wife, she did ballet when she was younger, right? So for the last 6 or 7 years, we've been going to the Orlando Ballet, and I'm not. It's not my favorite thing, but I've learned to enjoy it to some degree and appreciate the work and so on. Wrestling is a show, and I think people forget that, and so in my opinion, crowd reaction is everything. You need the crowd in it. And if you look at WrestleMania 3, I mean, when you have, whether it's 93,000 or 80,000, whatever number it really is, that place was going bananas. And so to me, that's what creates the excitement. You can have, I saw a clip yesterday of, I think it was an independent show of some kind, and the guy does some jump off the top ropes, knee to the back that looks brutal, right? And there's no crowd reaction, and it's a small crowd, but you could still react. I mean, think about that. Somebody took a very serious bump that could have caused very serious injury, and nobody cared. And Hogan, on the other hand, lifts older Andre and slams him,
Yep.
and the place just loses their mind. And so to me, that's what wrestling is. It's a show, and it's about crowd reaction and excitement. And I'm more into that than the 5-star match.
That's why I love Roman Reigns today. I don't know how much you really watch of like the curse, but that's why I love Roman Reigns. Took a lot of stuff from Hogan, kind of learned that main event style, like look to the crowd, point, talk, do its other stuff. Don't necessarily have to break your back and go crazy. I mean, Hogan did the point, and the crowd went nuts. Somebody has a Canadian Destroyer or that move with a speedball, and he's breaking somebody's back, and you get no pop. It's the guy, it's the charisma, it's the emotion of the match. So that's why I love Hogan. That's why I love Reigns, because I think Reigns took a lot, and I've heard has taken a lot from watching that Hogan like main event style of like getting the crowd involved, getting investment, rather than just do crazy moves the whole time.
Well, I think Roman Reigns looks like a star. I mean, he's
Well, that too,
obviously,
yeah.
well,
Yep.
no, I mean, he's a handsome guy. He's incredibly well built, but he's slowed down, and when you sell to the crowd and get a reaction, I think it creates more reactions, right? And so now, I mean, he obviously has the crowd in the palm of his hands, and I think that's critical. Like my favorite's Brock Lesnar, but Brock has sort of changed characters and so forth, but he's a power move guy, right? He's not really a story seller, and I think where Roman has really benefited is it's a storyline. It's getting buy-in, whereas Brock, you just sort of can go out there and kick ass, and but at the same token, I mean, I love the fact that Brock is not willing to sell. I mean, you will see him sell for anybody he works with, right? So it's like when these people say, "Oh, they don't want to create new stars." I mean, Brock, in my opinion, is incredibly giving in the ring. I mean, like these matches and sort of altercations with Cody Rhodes. Um, we both know if this was a bar fight, that Cody Rhodes has
Yeah.
zero, he has
He's
no
gonna lose.
chance.
Yeah.
But Brock, on the other hand, will sell, sell, sell. And so he's great. But I think, to your point, Roman is sort of taken on this star power. And a lot of that, you just got to get the crowd invested. And he has.
And I noticed with Brock, especially if he likes the guy and it's a smaller guy, he'll sell. Like I remember the match with AJ Styles and the match with Brian Danielson, aka Daniel Bryan. Like he really sold. He likes those guys. You could tell. Like he really sold for them, even though they're a lot smaller, because he wanted to make the match look good. There's some other guys in there where he'll just literally just like Braun Strowman, he'll literally just beat the shit out of them because they got a little too aggressive. So I mean, obviously, if he likes you, he'll sell for you. And he must like Cody because he sells for him like crazy. It's like wow, Cody got the one up on him. It's like wow, amazing.
I tell you something. I'm not a fan of Braun Strowman. And so this is a fun story. So, I live in Orlando, Florida, and obviously NXT's here. And so I guess it's been 7 years ago, and we were downtown and in Halloween at a nightclub. And, I'm not trying to make myself sound important, but, we were in the VIP section with bottles and stuff like that.
Nice.
And it was in, we were above the dance floor and you could sort of look out to it. Well, Braun Strowman's a very tall guy. And so he comes over and we're chatting with him and he's dressed up as a girl. And I had no idea, this is when was in NXT. I had no idea who he was. And we get to chat. And I said, look, you've got a great look. You kind of remind me of Bruiser Brody. I could see that you could, be something in wrestling. I showed him one of the Hogan cards. He was so cool. Everything was great, right? Well, fast forward like 5 years later, I had a neighbor that was hooking up with Dana Brooke. And Dana Brooke and him were like traveling pals and stuff. And so she says something. And anyway, I posted a photo of the picture I took of Braun online. It took me 5 years to figure out it was Braun Strowman. I was like, gosh, I can't figure out who this is. And it turned out it was him. He's like, oh, this Mark just posted a photo of me and stuff. And, I thought to myself, I was nice to you when you were nobody. Okay. And now you're at the time, he was really big in WWE. I mean, he got fired shortly after. But I just don't like that. I think that, you should be appreciative of your fans. You should be appreciative where you come from. You should be appreciative of your spot. And, I'm not saying that you've got to be out, like you see these stories of people at the airport tracking them down. And, I saw Jeff Hardy, somebody, he signed like 15 items. I'm not saying you got to do that, but don't badmouth the fans, that for lack of a better term made you. And Braun Strowman, I was like, man, this guy's a jerk. And, anyway, so it turned out that, he obviously got dropped shortly after, but um, I not a fan of that guy after that because, well, like I said, when you call people Mark and you're dissing people, and I was friends with the person that, Dana was hooking up with and she was traveling with Braun. It's like, you'd think you'd be a little cooler.
Yeah, for sure. And he's had a couple bad experiences online that I know of, and I've heard he's had bad experiences when he was doing those indie shows with a couple fans. So I guess maybe sometimes not the friendliest of guys. Maybe doesn't have
Yeah.
super fans for sure.
Well, I mean, here's the thing. Like I said, I mean, like I'm not expecting him to be, like signing 20 autographs for somebody, but just sort of be happy. Like at the time, I mean, he was a top draw in WWE. Like that's rarefied air. Be happy that you came from NXT and you were basically a nobody dressed up as a girl for Halloween. Wonder Woman is what he was, and now all of a sudden you're kicking ass on TV. Like that's pretty cool.
And that's why I love the Hulkster, and that's why I love Piper. It's like two of the nicest guys. It's like as far as fan getting autographs and meeting them, man, two of the nicest. Hogan might be the nicest I've ever met. I've met hundreds of guys, and Hogan his was awesome to me. I probably met him, I think 4 times, 5 times, and he was awesome every time.
Well, Hulk is. I think the issue with Hulk is I've never been more starstruck. Um, he commands a presence that's just different. The first time I ever met him, my twin and Bill and I were backstage at TNA. So Impact. It was TNA at the time, and they were filming at Universal Studios in Orlando, and had a neighbor that got us backstage, and good tickets, and all of a sudden Hulk was there, and we were like, Hogan, like, I mean, you just can't, like, I mean, he just elicits a response. When you see Hulk Hogan in person, it's just wow. And he shook our hands and took a photo, and I tell you, it was so disappointing because I don't know what happened with the camera, but it basically made my face look like completely deformed. And Bill looked great in the photo, but something happened to my head. It was terrible. But he shook our hands, and that the other thing about Hogan is he is just such a huge guy. Like his hands are like bear paws, where you're just like, wow. I mean, he's obviously gotten smaller height wise, but he's just a huge man, and you just feel his presence as a real star.
He's the best to me. Hulkamaniac for life, definitely my favorite. But you mentioned something before. I wanted to go back to it because I was so curious about this. Back to wrestling cards. You said COVID changed like the price. What was that all about? Because it felt like they were like inflated like crazy. And are they back to normal now? Like what happened with the card game? Was that Gary V doing something, calling certain things rookie cards and changing the game? Like what happened?
Well, I think really what happened is that you had an explosion in the entire card market, right? And I'm not somebody that ever has gotten any stimulus checks, but you saw a lot of younger people that were getting their 2,000 or 4,000 or whatever the number was, and they started diving into cards. And I think the other big issue was cryptocurrency. Um, as the crypto market skyrocketed, so did the card market. I would argue, so I'm in finance. I would argue the correlation between the crypto market and cards was very, very high. Wrestling definitely got a huge uptick from Gary V. No doubt about it. I mean, like I had been posting online, for 10 years about cards, and as soon as Gary V would say something, they started to move. But I think it was a macro issue as far as loads of money coming into speculative asset classes, whether it was trading cards, crypto, NFTs, speculative stocks. You saw a massive correction in all of that stuff, and so I think the wrestling card market has corrected significantly, and I don't know if we've hit bottom yet. It still seems like a lot of stuff is pretty weak, but Hogan essentially emerged as the term so overused, but the GOAT, and his stuff is different, and I think that he's held some of the gains, a good chunk of the gains, not anywhere near all of the gains. But I think the thing about Hulk is that he's just a different animal. I mean, it's just you take like his 85 tops card that we referenced earlier.
Yep.
There's a ton of them that exist, but it's Hulk Hogan. It's Hulkamania. It is everything we remember, either from our childhood or, slightly after. So, you're, a little younger than me. So maybe by 87, 88, you had a better handle on Hulk Hogan versus, say, 83. But the difference is that it doesn't change the fact. I mean, you still love Hulk Hogan. And so, but there's definitely was a lot of factors that drove the market up, and we're now in a pretty significant correction for a lot of stuff.
With that, like as far as some of those cards, I know Gary V was talking about there was a Steve Austin. I don't know what those yellow cards. He said
Yeah.
Steve Austin, The Rock, or rookie cards. Is that necessarily true? Is that the case? And how much are they worth?
Well, so the yellow Steve Austin is a 1991 Chromie. It's actually from Argentina, and it's like a card deck. So yeah, I mean, I guess it's his first appearance on something. Um, an eight, so a pretty strong card. I've seen some sales recently at like $700. that's down a lot. At the peak, that would have probably been 2,500. But at 4 or 5 years ago, it was like $50. So I think one of the things that has to be taken into consideration is that the better star cards, I mean, a lot of them, have fallen dramatically, but if you have a 5 year look back, they've gone up, substantially, and so the Rock, I think what you're probably talking about is the 97 Cardinal cards. Um,
Yes. Yep.
yes. And, that's the first Stone Cold card, but it's dropped, dramatically. There's plenty of those. I tell you, I got really fortunate. I had was really early on that stuff, and felt like that was the Rock's first wrestling card, which it was, or if you want to
Yeah.
call it a card. And I nailed a 10, and I was fortunate to sell that card, at the peak, and that was pretty nice. So, but those have all dropped dramatically. See, one of the issues that people forget is supply and demand, right? So it's nothing's changed in terms of it's still very cool, but what's happened is, like that Rock card, a ton of them got graded, right? Like, so people saw high prices, they raced out and got them graded, and then they want to sell, And so I'm unique in the sense that, I still have a large portion of the cards I've ever bought. I'm a collector. I have sold, but the difference is that, I'm not, this isn't like a, flip, 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 Scary V and his followers. A lot of them were sneakerheads, and, their goal was to basically, take 100, turn it into 200, and then 200 into 400. You know,
Right.
I bought this stuff. I like wrestling. I mean, I like to collect cards, and so, um, I have a lot of the cards I've bought.
Interesting too. Like I know the blue foil pack, the WWF Classic. Like everybody had like a million of them. My God, I still have like a box just full of them. Like, are any of those worth anything, or is it just one of the things they made too many of those? They're not really worth anything. Like I have a bunch of Hogans and stuff.
I'm assuming. Are you talking about the 1991?
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Yeah. So the Undertaker card is,
Like
the.
this. I'm not sure what year that would
Oh
have
no,
been.
okay, that's 1990 classic. Yeah, I mean,
91 is the Undertaker rookie, right? That's worth a lot.
well, I mean, it's dropped a lot too because what happened is everybody raced out and got them graded. Um, that right there is 1990. It's unfortunately kind of 10 or bust. If you get a 9, it's not really worth a whole lot. A 10, I mean, they've come down a lot. It's a supply and demand issue. Like in 1990, 91. If you think about baseball cards, they produced a ton. The
Yeah.
reason, so I'm sort of best known for my 1982, 83 Wrestling All Stars. Well, that's back during regional wrestling, right? And so it was just a magazine that made the cards and sold a mail order only, and there's just not a ton of those produced. It's somewhere around 2,000 sets. So that Hogan, the higher the grade, the higher the value. But just the card alone, I mean, you could take an 82 Hogan that's been run over by a car, and it's still probably $400 to $500 card at this point, right? Because there's only 2,000 of them. But if there was 200,000 of them, it might be a $2 card or a $10 card. So I think the reality of it is that we had this huge upsurge in 2021 and into 22, and then supply and demand took over as a lot more surfaced, and people were like, "Hey, let me cash in and let me sell."
So interesting. I saw Undertaker and a few guys were signing certain places, and they quote unquote wouldn't sign rookie cards. Right? Isn't that weird? So I guess they're technically you're paying 250 for his autograph, but you could, it's not really their problem though. He should just sign whatever's in front of him. But they basically didn't want you to take that card that was a rookie card, him sign it. Now it's worth more, which is
Exactly.
crazy. But that's what they were doing for a lot of the guys.
Yeah, so basically what's happened is Fitterman Sports has taken over a lot of
Yep.
these guys, and I'm hearing that, and there's rumblings, and look, I mean, I don't have any inside connection, but Fanatics has bought Tops, and Fanatics is a huge player in sports memorabilia. And my
Yes.
understanding is later this year they're signing Hogan, right? But Fitterman Sports is a guy from Texas, and he represents The Undertaker, Mike Tyson, Ric Flair, John Cena, a few other guys. And it's basically he's just limiting supply. And what they do is they go out and buy the cards and get them to sign them and then try to sell them. And so it's a money grab, and it's an attempt at reducing supply. And listen, I mean, as much as I find it annoying, but I understand it from a business perspective, because the reality of it is with autographs is a lot of items you essentially add no value, right? Like an 8x10 that's common. It's about the experience. You're not gaining any value, but the right item can explode in value. I mean, if you look at, so wrestling is a niche category, but like take like baseball cards, for example. If you take a rookie card of some of the long term legends like Hank Aaron or Mickey Mantle or Jackie Robinson, I mean, you're looking at profit levels that are huge, right? And so I this doesn't surprise me at all. I mean, my first encounter with Hulk was unfortunately not a positive one, and quite frankly, most of them haven't been that positive because I think he views me as a profiteer. What he doesn't realize is I've kept every single item he's signed. But I'll never forget, when I went to the grand opening of the beach shop in Clearwater, I think it was 2012, and I brought the right stuff. I had three Wrestling All Stars cards. I had a baseball that I wanted signed on a sweet spot, for a friend of mine. I had the magazine that didn't really add value. That was more for me, but he was kind of chucking the All Stars at me. I mean, I don't think he was keen on signing that stuff at the time for 50, $60 a pop because there's profit, right? They want a piece of the action. And so if you look at Ron at the beach shop with Hogan, premium items are $300.
Yep.
They want to participate in the upside. And this is a very controversial topic with collectors. I actually side with the talent, and I understand that's not popular, but if I bring an item to you, and let's say you charge $50, and we know it's going to increase $500 just for argument's sake, I'm the winner in that transaction. And so that's a really wide spread. So I don't have a problem with the talent wanting to participate or their vendor, however you want to look at that, and that spread, right? And so, a signed Wrestling All Stars Hogan, if he signs that for $60 and he just hands you, $600 or $800 of equity, that's a really nice deal for you. And so for them to narrow that spread a little bit, I just don't have a problem with. And so what's happened is Fitterman is, very knowledgeable on all this stuff and is purposely limiting supply, dramatically. And but I think he's overreaching his bounds. He signed Brock, and Brock, they wanted $500 for any of the rookie cards, just like they want when they will allow the Undertaker. I didn't send any in. The first card to make it to eBay, it sold for like 250. So I knew, I was like, listen, as much as I want Brock, I have a lot of cool stuff I'd love signed. I just draw a line, because I think a lot of people don't understand, my degree in college is in economics, right? And that's why, you know, and I'm not trying to brag, but the reason I've been so successful with cards is I used my economics knowledge and applied it to cards. And I'm not paying $500 to turn it into 250. It's just not for me.
Just curious, like with some of the rookie cards, the 1987 O-Pee-Chee Bret Hart. What is that worth? If worth anything at all.
No, it's a good card. Um, it has come down a lot. I mean, it skyrocketed in 2021. It's going to be once again very, very condition sensitive, raw versus graded. If you have that card just raw, like, and as long as it's not like really beat up, I'd guess you could probably get $50 for it. It's a good card. I mean, the O-Pee-Chee print run is much lower than tops. If it's a nine, those have come down a lot, but it's probably still a $500 card. Um, Years ago, Gary V bought the only 10, and he paid 2,300. I don't know what it's would be worth today, but I would guess it's, could probably still command somewhere close to that. And so I think where a lot of non card collectors, they sort of don't understand the price escalation between a six, seven, eight, nine, and 10. And really what it boils down to is it's bragging rights. It appeals to the senses of, my card is better than your card. And, if you look at modern trading cards, what they do is, they create a one of one, a one of five, a one of 10, a one of 25. And so grading sort of creates that disparity. And, production qualities were terrible in the 80s. And so, you're not going to, if you take the Bret Hart, um, I haven't looked at the pop report recently. There was only 110. It's never going to be a lot. I mean, could it grow to five? Maybe, but it's never going to be a lot. And so there's not a lot of room at the top if people want to have the nice stuff. And, that's why, prices have escalated so dramatically on the premier stuff is because there's just very little of it and very little chance there will be a lot more.
Years ago, and I have it here. I got an autograph from him years ago, and I didn't even think anything that it was worth anything because I wasn't paying attention to the card market at the time. But I was like, oh, it's probably worth something. Obviously now that I knew a little bit about the market, I was like, damn, it's a rookie card and it's signed. Probably worth something. I've never got it graded though.
That's an O-Pee-Chee.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I would say just even in its current state, it's probably $300. That's the type of thing. I mean, some people have no desire to, spend the money to get them authenticated or get in a
Yep.
holder, but you could pay $25 to PSA and get that in a holder. I mean, that's a solid card. I mean, there's really strong demand. I think where that's really cool is, Brett's Canadian, and so the production level of the Canadian version is much lower. And I'm not a fan of Bret Hart personally. I think I like his wrestling in the 80s. I think and look, I mean, there's people that love Bret, but I think he's become sort of a sourpuss. And I think the negative tone of his interviews have just sort of turned me off. And look, I'm just a fan. And so, he has every reason to be upset at Bill Goldberg and so on. But, I just think when he talks so negatively about so many wrestlers, it just sort of turns me off. But he has legions of fans. And what's good about that is, the O-Pee-Chee print run, is just so much lower. So, that's a solid card under all circumstances.
Now, as we hit the wind down here, we head towards the finish. What is your all-time favorite card? Would it be the 82 Hogan?
Oh yeah, I mean it's not close because I mean the thing is that I've got a lot of the cards, but The thing that's just so magical about the 82 Hogan is they took the promo photo in 1979, right with before he debuted in Madison Square Garden against Ted DiBiase. So you're looking like December of '79, and Vince Senior had given him the name Hulk Hogan. A lot of people are not thrilled with the shot. They always say, "Oh, he looks like he's about to take a shit or something." But yeah, he's 26 years old. It is, so he's got some trading cards from Japan from 1981, but they're Hogan from 1981, and he just looks different, right? I mean, he was becoming more of a star. The 82 All Star has him. I mean, that is literally his promotional photo from '79 when he becomes Hulk Hogan and gets the name from Vince Senior. And so I just think that it has this sort of magical appeal. And I find it so cool because he hadn't really had any big matches yet. I mean, he literally was coming into the WWF, and just I mean, he had is obviously a very large, muscular guy, but he didn't have anything happen yet, and so it is like a true rookie card. And then when you factor in that there's just so many other stars in the set, and it's sort of history in the making. It's the first pack driven, even though it was mail order only, first pack driven set in the United States. It just has a lot to it. So it's my favorite card. And I think it's like I said before, the Mickey Mantle 1952 tops of wrestling cards. And the prices reflect that. And, it's, well, I mean, I feel very vindicated because, I've been, pumping that card or talking positively about it since 2010, and people had a lot of fun with me, when the Hogan sex tape came out, and, the card price collapsed, and, it said, oh, I told you wrestling cards were a bubble. Well, it found the bottom and then it went up like 50x. So, it's pretty cool.
What's the most valuable card you have? Would it be one of those Hogans? Maybe a 9 level, 9 grade?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's only four of the Andre, which is the top card in the set, in terms of the sealed sets. There's no public sales in a long time. It's those. I also have a Mike Tyson. What I did is, back after I sort of discovered the All Stars and decided I wanted to invest in these cards. I was like looking for new targets, and so I have a 10 of the Mike Tyson 86, Panini Super Sport from Italy, and there's only three of those, and at the peak, I mean, it's down a lot, but that was probably $150,000 card.
Oh,
I'd say it's still, if I had to guess, maybe 45,000, maybe, somewhere in there. It's hard to say, but, so one of those three. I have two Hogan nines still, and I have an Andre and a Tyson. So it's one of those, but um, it's not, the Andre. I mean, I have more Andres than anybody. I got 36 of those because I was trying so hard to get a nine, and so I bought loads of those cards, and I ended up buying a nine, the second one that existed. But so one of those three are there, and Flair is probably not too far behind. But I think the other thing is you just don't really know what they're worth because the population's so low. So you could see, just for argument's sake, let's say I listed a Ric Flair PSA 10. If you got a couple of pro athletes or high level business guys that were just like, man, I want that. You know, it could go for a lot. If they don't show up, it doesn't go for as much as you hope, right?
true. What's your white whale? What's something that you haven't been able to get? Not as far as grade wise, just actual card wise.
Unfortunately, that doesn't exist, and
Wow.
that's yeah, it's a I've been at this almost 14 years, and the reality of it is one of the challenges. I mean, I really part of the reason I post so much on social media is just for entertainment because I don't get the entertainment of buying cards. And I've literally, I mean, I don't think I've bought a card in 6 weeks, and I bought one. It's probably one card in the last 3 months, and so I think I think a lot of people don't understand. I mean, I was so aggressive and just so active and willing to pounce that I've got most of the cards I could ever want, and it stinks in many ways because collecting's fun. It's fun to like acquire new stuff, and you get on eBay and you're like, no thanks. I guess I mean it's not. It would never sort of reach the magnitude of some of the cards we're talking about, but there is one item I'm still looking for, and it's a 1985 sticker of Magnum TA, and it's the WMMC. They're basically the AWA stickers, and for a long time, it sort of seemed like there was only 12 in the set, and there's actually 15. And I saw one Magnum TA like 10 years ago, and we chatted about it on Blowout forums, and never would have guessed it was as rare as it was, and never seen another one since. And actually, when I was in New Jersey, a couple months ago, I showed a picture because I did get a sticker. It's kind of like a bootleg sticker signed by Magnum, and Magnum and I are, I don't want to say close, but we know each other pretty well because I've helped a friend of mine that does wrestling conventions, and so I've been, Magnum TA's handler like 2 times, and you sit there for 4 hours, 6 hours, and you get to know each other pretty well. So he recognizes me and Michelle, when we saw him, and I showed him a picture. He's never seen it, and it's one of the things I'm dealing with. Unfortunately, a health issue right now where I've got my right leg is got a full blood clot, and we're hoping this clears up soon. But I was really planning on going to the gathering in North Carolina in another 2 weeks, and that had to obviously be put on hold. I can't go, and so it's a lot of fun. It sounds like you've had up close personal experiences with the wrestlers. It's just a lot of fun when you get to talk to them, and you're not the fan that's coming up pouring your heart out. You get to just sit there and sort of level with them. And Magnum is a really interesting guy because he obviously went through a life changing situation in 1986, and he's a humble guy, but he's also a proud guy. And I really I put out a bounty on that card online, and it hasn't surfaced. So I guess you could call that my white whale.
Nice, nice. I was at 80s Wrestling Con as well. I didn't realize you were over there. Would have said hello. I didn't realize you were there. Damn.
Yeah, we went to New Jersey, and we turned a weekend out of it. We went to New York for 2 days, and then went to the
Nice.
show, and that was a great thing because I've got there's a set of trading cards from 1979 from Nick Goulas's territory, and David Schultz is in that set, and that was the first signed card from David Schultz, and that was cool.
Awesome. Nice. And I did a little private with Brett. My God, his line was insane. So waiting a long time to do it, but I got a bunch of those 90 classic cards signed from him. I don't know if they're necessarily worth anything just without the autograph, but I guess there was something with his autograph on it.
Yeah, excuse me. I would say anything is worth something with an autograph on it, right?
Yep.
And when you were at that show, the Brett line was unbelievable. I
That
mean,
was insane. Insane.
well, we got there. uh, probably an hour and a half. Did the show start at 11?
Yep.
Yep, we got there kind of closer to 1 o'clock, right? And it was a check-in issue because we had come from Manhattan, and we got a hotel there, and so we got in, and I didn't, I already have some Brett stuff, and but quite frankly, I mean that line, when you got in there, I mean it wrapped around the entire Civic Center. There was really only two guys that had lines that were long. Sergeant Slaughter had a line that was sort of decent, but
Yep.
Brett's line was, I mean, it was unbelievable. I mean, yeah, I don't know how long it took for people to get to see him, but we were there only about an hour, and I felt like the line was steady the whole time. Like it didn't stop.
Man, his line, I don't know if I've ever seen one go that long before. Like, I think it was like 5 hours by the time the end happened, and they were cutting people off at one point. So, I mean, that was crazy, that line. Loyal
Wow.
fans, loyal fans
Yeah,
of Brett.
that's the thing about Brett is that like I'm not like a huge fan of the guy, but I have lots of his autographs, and but see what's wild is years ago before wrestling, because wrestling memorabilia 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago was not hot. Wrestling memorabilia has become more popular. And I mean, I've got, I think I was paying like $7 an auto or something with a guy that was, going in on a bulk thing. So I was like, sure, get a bunch
Right.
signed,
Yep.
But I wish I'd done more. But I think what was he at that show? $60, $80?
I think it was 60, and then I think if it was 100 if you got the
Photo
autograph,
op.
and yeah, I think something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and whatever. I mean, here's the thing. What I've found at working some of these conventions with my friend Greg is the photo op is a big deal to a lot of people. And I mean, you'll see people come through the line that they don't even want to get an autograph. They just want the photo.
Yep.
And and you'll see some of the fans, and I don't blame them, but they got to tell them the story, So it's like a 30-second deal where they're like, "Oh, you're my favorite," and so on. And I guess what I would say to most fans is, as much as you want to do it, it doesn't really resonate, unfortunately, with the wrestlers from what I've seen.
Sometimes no, but it was weird. I was listening in on Brett, some of the stuff he was asking them questions and stuff. I was like,
Oh,
I was
good.
like, yeah, he was actually like awesome with them. Like some guy sat down and said something, and he recognized the picture, and he was talking about the picture, and he said, "What was your favorite moment of this?" Like he was actually like conversing with them. It's like, oh, it was pretty awesome, like good experience for that guy. And the guy came off the line, and said, that was awesome. Oh my god.
Well, I wish they would do that because I mean, what's really cool, and I think you would agree, is we love this stuff, right? Like I love wrestling, and I in my free time, I watch old wrestling and so on, and so it's like when somebody walks up, like at the Magnum TA situation, where I got him to sign that sticker because finally I was having him sign as a fan, I was paying versus being the handler, and was trying to find the photo of that 85 sticker. I mean, there was a guy right there that was, just pouring his guts out, but he didn't buy an autograph. And, I think what people forget is, this is how a lot of these guys either make their livelihood or they make supplemental income. And as much
It's a
as
business.
it's a business, and as much as you want to sit there and tell them for 5 minutes how they changed your life, they also want you to buy an autograph. And I think that's fair.
Absolutely. It's pretty cool though, like that some of these guys will do these shows and be really good and personable with the guys and kind of personalize this experience. But like you said, it is still business though. You still got to realize, you got to pay the guy for the autograph. Don't talk his ear off the whole time. Be reticent of how much time you're taking away from maybe somebody else. So yeah, it's a business. Period. Basically, it is a business.
Yeah, and I mean, I think I had a chance to chat a little bit with Steve Kern at that show, and look, I mean, if the line's dead, and they've got time, that's one thing, but ultimately, at the end of the day, I think we all we all, it's a big deal. Like I don't have like, I grew up, like I said, playing baseball and stuff, but wrestling was my deal. I love to watch wrestling, and it's part of my childhood, my teenage years, my young adult years. I've been to the two WrestleManias in Orlando. I mean, if one came tomorrow, I'm going. So you can be a lifelong wrestling fan, and uh, I think they appreciate it, but you also got to be mindful of their time, and the fact that look, they're. I mean, I'm gainfully employed. I'm sure you have a good job too. A lot of these guys are, that they're banking on you buying some autographs.
Right. Absolutely. Very true. Could talk to you about wrestling and wrestling cards forever, but let's wind it down and head for the finish here. Where can everybody find you, and where can everybody see you? Where can everybody see your cards, social media, and otherwise?
Sure. As David Peck, on Twitter as dpeck100, on Instagram. I got the 1982 Wrestling All Stars because that's kind of what I focus on, and you can find me, if you just search for dpeck100, and I'm real active on Twitter, and it's interesting. It feels like things have slowed down a lot because I think they're sort of limiting private messages, but if you're not following, or they're not following you. But I
Right.
respond to people's questions, and I help lots of collectors, and just happy to be a part of the wrestling culture.
All right, David, thank you so much for all the time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me on. Hope you guys enjoy the show, and look forward to seeing you again.